organizations, Paytm Council of India, and Fintech Convergence Council and National Payments Corporation of India. Fintech innovations are helping reduce the cost of providing services, making it possible to reach more people and reducing the need for face-to-face interactions, essentials for keeping up economic activity during the pandemic. The fest is presented by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, the Reserve Bank of India, and supported by Niti Aayog, Startup India, and Invest India. We would like to thank our partners, Platinum partner Visa, AWS and PhonePe, Diamond partner Cred, Country partner Australian Government, Track partner HSBC India and Refinitiv India, and session partner the UK Government Department of International Trade. Our next session is a workshop on how to enter EU markets for fintechs. Without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panelists we have with us today. Mr. Liudas Kanapienis, CEO Ondato, Miroslav Lucinskij, CEO Critical Security, Martynas, Bieliunas, Managing Partner Privacy Partners, and Mr. Andrius, Petkevicius, Cluster Manager, BCC Cluster. I would request all the delegates to put their questions on the Q&A window, and our panelists will answer them at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Andrius. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining the panel discussion, How to Enter EU Markets for Fintechs. I am Andrius Petkevicius, Cluster Manager at BCCS Cluster, and I will be moderating today's panel. BCCS Cluster is a consortium of private and public sector organizations that support the growth and development of the fintech and ICT industries with knowledge, talent, and technology. With us today, we have BCCS Cluster members that have successfully launched and worked with businesses that started or expanded their operations into the European Union. The panel will be up to 50 minutes with a 10-minute Q&A session. Do make sure to leave your questions as we go along the way, and we will try to answer them at the second part of the discussion. In today's panel, we will focus on bridging the gap in terms of what it actually takes to launch or expand a business in the EU. What are the opportunities, barriers, or challenges? So without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to our panelists and ask you guys to tell us more about yourselves and the companies that you represent. Maybe, Liudas, we could start off with you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Pleasure to be here and pleasure to be here with this fantastic group of people. So shortly about myself, I'm the CEO at Ondato. We are actually helping the financial institutions to turn the compliance into the business benefit from the perspective of know your customer and handling all the processes related to that. So from the customer onboarding, data validation, monitoring, due diligence, and other related topics, what touches with know your customer procedures with any financial institution. So we work with the biometrics, we work with the data analysis and other stuff what relates to that process handling. And yeah, so myself, I was actually running a financial institution before, and that was a very smooth transition for myself, basically to more not compete in the retail sector, chasing for the end consumers or end clients, but more to help others to work in the field and basically to benefit from the possibilities what the market brings. And starting in Lithuania was a really good choice from that perspective because concentration of financial institutions was increasing. The demand on digital services was also increasing very quickly and very fast, and that was basically the reason to start with. But on the other hand, we have to all understand that it's a very small market. You know, the population of Lithuania is less than 3 million. You know, which is like any suburb basically in India, and that is why the attitude on starting the business, and especially that kind of that we are working in, always makes you thinking and looking forward to expand globally, at least at the very beginning for the European markets. So for us that was the initial start, and a really good jump in basically at the very beginning.
Thank you, Liudas. Happy to have you here. Miroslav, over to you.
Thank you, Andrius. So, hello, everyone. My name is Miroslav Lucinskij. I'm a general manager of a company called Critical Security. So, we basically focus on providing cybersecurity services to fintechs and financial institutions around Europe. So, our main competence is performing all kind of vulnerability assessments, security audits, and so on. So, essentially, making fintech solutions more secure, and which is, again, I think we will discuss it during our conversation today, that in Europe, being secure, it's valuable, yes, and your customers, partners, agents, customers, they value that you put effort, and this effort should be adequate towards ensuring that basically your fintech or solution it provides is compliant with anti-money laundering, with GDPR, which is the EU privacy regulation in Europe, and as well some cybersecurity standards. So it is also, so I hope that I will be able to contribute to this discussion with some experience from those fields of enabling fintechs to match the requirements which are demanded by the regulators.
Thanks, Miroslav. Martynas, can you tell us more about yourself and Privacy Partners?
Thank you, Andrius, and great to be here with such a distinguished guest in this panel. So I'm Martynas Bieliunas, a managing partner of Privacy Partners, and our core business is privacy. So whatever it takes, because privacy and personal data is like a new old currency. Especially in Europe, privacy becomes non-negotiable factor if you want to work in Europe. The same as in other countries. In US, most of other countries also have privacy laws. You do need to comply with the privacy regulations. So that was a key business driver for us, and we started from privacy programs design and implementation in very different types of customers, from huge manufacturing consortiums to data-hungry startups. And as I said, privacy, it's necessary for any kind of business in Europe. You can be a fintech, you can be a service provider or software as a service developer for fintechs. You still need to take care about privacy. You need to ensure privacy by design. You need to have data protection officers. So on my side today, I will try to cover those topics, what relates to privacy working in Europe, how to click the privacy requirements between Europe and other countries, and we'll be happy to answer any questions on these topics. Thanks. Andrius, back to you.
Thank you, Martynas. Liudas, I would like to go back a bit to you, and actually, would you be able to share on your journey of starting Ondato in Lithuania? I believe that we had a discussion a few weeks ago, and you mentioned that now you are working in more than 20 countries. So can you tell us more on your journey in terms of starting here locally in Lithuania and actually expanding across Europe?
So currently, actually, we work with 34 countries and adding more. But because we build the solution like agnostic, let's say, to the country that we operate in, so that we could apply the local regulations in that market, basically, and then to fulfill the requirements of any institution. But if looking back to the journey, so that's what, like I mentioned, let's say in the very beginning. So when starting in Lithuania, since it's a really small country, and the market size, especially for the tech products or some kind of software products, I'm not talking about the services, but about some solutions, let's say, is quite small. Of course, depending on the what you're solving and what kind of problems you're solving and how deeply you're like integrating with your clients. But if providing something in the wider scale, the market is just too small. So by design, then you project all the systems and basically the solutions that you want to operate more scalable, and basically that you could apply that in different countries. So for us, it was a very obvious thing, to start in Europe as such. And to understand Europe is like different countries with the different languages, with the different regulations, and that by design, makes you to project all the things and the systems just like agnostic to the from the country's perspective, and to be able then to serve all the different regulations and different languages, whatever, so that's why like from the day one, of course not from the day one, Lithuania is a really good place to start the business as such, because of the small community, of the possibilities to reach people, to test the solutions and to test assumptions that you have. But basically then from the day two, going to other markets, so people are choosing differently, so in example, in our case, since the financial sector in the Baltic states is more or less the same, so having of course some differences, but the players there, especially with the financial institutions and all this stuff. So for us, that was the obvious thing to start with the Baltic states as such, and then to implement the solutions, in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. These are all three small markets, but the speed in those markets is really quick, so implementing any kind of solution or any kind of trial that you want to have. So basically it's really quick enough, and then you have the possibility to test your assumptions. And then when it works, because you have already the feedback and understanding from 3 different markets within 4 languages, so then you're able actually to go, to other countries, to be honest, quite easy, because in all of these 3 markets, everyone understands that building the solutions just for that market makes no sense, so they have to be just ready for scaling and to go into other markets. So that was the kind of very natural involvement of the of the company, of the products, and of the stuff. So and of course, later on, when you have this like bigger understanding of different markets, different mentality, different languages that you can support and all this stuff, so then of course it gives you wider opportunities. And when you launch something in Spanish, an example, that also opens the doors in the Southern American markets. When you launch something in Portuguese, then again the rest of the Southern American markets, so and when you do something in English, so then for sure the not only the UK market as such, but all the US market and that part of the world. So that's how it attracts all the other part of the business. So that's the involvement. That's the journey that we are having now. For sure, if you're looking from our perspective, there's still lots of the work that needs to be done in terms of having a bigger footprint in the markets that we operate now, because in some of the markets we just have, a few clients there and just starting picking up. But on the other hand, we already have some business cases, use cases that what to show basically, and the question is only about the scaling itself. So yeah, that's how it looks from my perspective.
Thanks, Liudas. So if we were to take, let's say, a company from India that wanted to expand their operations into the EU, what are the sort of barriers of entry or challenges? Maybe Martynas, you can chip in here.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with Liudas that Lithuania is a perfect test bed for fintech or software as a service companies. When we look into Europe from a data protection perspective, the great thing is that GDPR, it's more or less similar across Europe. So it's a huge market. It's 250 plus million. Additionally, many of countries outside Europe are also taking GDPR or General Data Protection Regulation as a kind of, let's say, the model law for the privacy. The hard thing is that GDPR is pretty tough. When we look into the requirements from the GDPR side, financial sanctions for non-complying with GDPR can be pretty high. On the other hand, for the fintechs, that's pretty natural because most of the fintechs, they need to comply with the central bank regulations, central bank legislation, and so on. For the companies which do not work in the fintech space but provide applications which collect a lot of personal data, GDPR compliance is very natural thing, and without it you cannot work in Europe or in anywhere in the world. The key points which I would emphasize, looking globally, there is an interesting period now. Globally, we can notice that some personal data wars are starting between countries. Most of the countries, they start to require that personal data should be secured by the cybersecurity means, encryption, access rights, and things like that. I think Miroslav can elaborate a little bit more on that. But additionally, the quite hard requirement is to keep the data locally. So, for example, in Europe, the quite hard requirement is data residency. And the best thing is that if you are operating in Europe, you should keep your personal data in European data center. Of course, it can be AWS, it can be Microsoft Azure or any other global providers, but typically you keep data locally. Another thing which you need to keep in mind that if you're working in Europe, you need to have data protection officer. It's a specialist who understands how to protect personal data, what are requirements in Europe or in other countries, who is a personal data controller, who is personal data processor, and things like that. So all in all, when you're entering the European markets, the same as worldwide. If you want to enter the US markets, you will have exactly the same requirements that you do need to have a very concise, very clear privacy protection program for your customers. Otherwise, if you are trying to skip that step and you're trying to skip the privacy protection, it simply may result in quite high financial sanctions. So on one hand, it's like a hurdle, it's a barrier for entering the market. On the other hand, the normal approach to the privacy, it's a very natural for any today business which works with personal data. So that should be already included in your design, in your application or your service already. So let's say normally privacy shouldn't be considered as a barrier, but should be considered as a possibility to generate more customer trust and more possibilities to use customer data in future. So that's a very, very brief overview how you should look into the privacy entering European markets. And Andrius, back to you.
Yeah, I recall when GDPR actually came into force back in 2016, I believe. I recall that some of the international companies that did not necessarily have presence in the EU shut off their services to the European Union customers because, if I'm not mistaken, if, for example, you are servicing customers from the EU, you have to automatically apply the GDPR compliance. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. GDPR, speaking legally, is extraterritorial. So if you are servicing European Union customers, you do need to comply to GDPR. So even if you are outside the European Union and have your data centers, let's say in India, in US or wherever else, you do need in principle to comply to GDPR, which again is not so complicated when you look to the overall attention to the privacy worldwide.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Martynas. Miroslav, in your opinion, what are the sort of main cybersecurity aspects to take into consideration when doing business in the EU?
Well, I think I agree to what our colleagues have already touched upon. I mean, I think all these matters are rather complex, so there is no easy answer for any those questions. But for example, let's in the context of this event, let's imagine we are fintech from emerging market which wants to get a grasp on European customers. Yeah, so we are located somewhere in Asia, India. I think the location or the initial location is not that important. Yeah, but if we want to bring our product to Europe, yeah, so it means that most likely from data protection, from licensing of the financial operations, we will have to establish some kind of entity in Europe. So and Europe is not one country; it's many countries. So you can always choose which one you like. but again, not maybe there are countries which have more sun, like Spain. Yeah, but those are bigger ones. So you will not have easy access to regulators. If you want to, if you are bringing some kind of a new disruptive product to the market, I think it's always good to have a dialogue with the regulators, because not all financial products are standard. So you can have like specific situations where maybe it's better to discuss with the regulators up front. Yeah, and also if you are fintech from a emerging market. Yeah? So it means you have the head office or some representative office in Europe, but your software development is probably sitting still in your destination, well, in your origin country. Yeah, so it means that you should again what Martynas mentioned is that you should ensure that the data is processed accordingly. So because it has to be stored usually in the boundaries of European Union, and but your software developers will have access to it. Yeah, so you have to prepare the regulations how you will address this, because I mean even sometimes you can store something in the cloud, but this cloud should be also located in Europe. Yeah? And I think speaking of beginning of the business and the same, I think it's because cybersecurity is also important. Yeah, because in Europe you are expected to have certain level of data protection, cybersecurity level, and so on. So, and this is usually again your customers, your maybe investors, which you will attract. They will demand some kind of proof that you are doing, security audits, that you are have implemented like secure development lifecycle. Because imagine you have a customer which integrates your solution into his business processes, and he is trying as well to be compliant with all the regulations, with all the demands of their investors. Maybe they are publicly traded company as your customer. Yeah? So they will be putting this piece of software you are giving to them, yeah, and into their daily procedures or processes. So it means that it has to be at least at the same level or higher in terms of security. Yeah? So they because I think European customers they want to get the best in terms of security, the best in terms of functionality, and the best in terms of cost perspective. Yeah? So this is like a triangle which needs to be balanced. And for you as coming from emerging countries, yeah, to compete with the local let's say market players will be challenging. Yeah? So you have to bring something new to the market, something really which solves some issues or maybe does things optimal, but as well you have to prove that this piece of software or a product you are bringing in, it's also at the same adequate level of offers the same adequate level of protection. So I think this could be also again maybe a cultural thing that in other countries in Asia, in other parts of the world, there are different cultural understandings of what is secure, what is not secure, how much effort you should put in protecting your software you are developing. So it also you have to maybe think how you can integrate cybersecurity, in the architecture of your product, so that it will be like more likely to be bulletproof in the European market. Andrius, back to you.
Thanks, Miroslav. And overall, are there any sort of international standards that would, let's say, do the foundation for compliance of doing business in the EU, such as the ICO series? Maybe Martynas, you can chip in here. I can see that you are on mute.
Apologies. So if we're looking to the overall requirements, again, requirements which definitely should be met. First thing, it's security and privacy by design of your applications. Second thing, if you transfer data to and from European Union, you should very clearly notify your customers, and accordingly, if you create some applications which have a server base worldwide, and for example, servers are stored outside European Union in some cloud provider, that also should be accounted. And as Miroslav very rightly mentioned, let's say it's not so easy to compete in Europe because there are also local software producers. But on the other hand, if you do provide a very, very concise and very clear approach about privacy, if you do provide very clear privacy framework for your customers, it can be companies, it can be individual customers like consumers, then it definitely would help to push through your application. And I should admit that working with developers from India, in many cases, we do see that privacy aspects and security aspects are, in some sense, a little bit neglected. That's pretty natural, especially if we're talking about startups market. Of course, the key business priority for any startup is to ensure a core functionality of your business. Not the security, not the privacy. But when you look into the European markets, and again, the same approach will be in US, in many other countries, privacy comes even before the business functionality. Because currently, for example, if you are a small startup, if you are just starting your business, of course, you may be not so much interesting for any, let's say, any legal, let's say, legal scammers and so on. But when you grow, of course, all the security and privacy related questions will pop up. And then the trouble can be that if your application, if your service is not designed with a privacy and security in mind, it can be very hard and very investment intensive to redesign your application. Many European companies struggle currently. It's incumbent business companies which have their information systems for 20 and more years. We're currently struggling with redesigning of their systems to keep up with the new privacy requirements because systems simply are not designed. They are too old. When they were designed, privacy and personal data was not a high value. It was just, how to say, no one was valuing their personal data. Currently, the situation is completely different. On the other hand, it also opens the new business opportunities in Europe. Those players who do need to do a normal cloud transformation, who do need to implement the privacy programs in their systems, they do need help. There is a huge shortage of data protection officers worldwide and in Europe. So that can be also a business area, that can be an entry point for your companies if you do offer some concise, clear privacy solutions. If your service, cloud service or software as a service is, how to say, privacy minded, then definitely it can, how to say, create some market opportunities and lower some entry barriers. So Andrius, back to you.
Thanks, Martynas. I actually see a question from the audience. Any suggestion to find regulations and committees before launching a product in the EU? So, of course, probably they are able to connect directly with you, Martynas, Miroslav, or Liudas regarding the regulations, but what would you say would be a good place to start?
I
Yeah,
think I think maybe the core question is where do you start? So to look for what kind of regulations there are, what kind of requirements there are. So I think what is important that you would begin to not, because you not only want to read this on the internet, because I think all the regulations and laws are there, yeah? So it's very easy probably to find, but you are not sure as a foreign company which ones do actually apply to you in your case. So I would say that, for example, like our association BCCS, yeah, it's one of the starting points. You look for private and public entities which are dealing with foreign investors. So they will be able to guide you to maybe point you at the right direction what you are looking for. So in Lithuania we also have many government agencies which could be of use. Some public and private partnerships related, in different topics. With blockchain, you go to one direction. In financial services, or like lending or whatever, you go to another. But anyhow, I think I would say that if you are looking into Europe as a market, you have to start with discussions with the entities which are there, which could give you some insights about what you are about to deal with. Yeah? So because you don't know this upfront, and it's not easy to know what regulations would apply to you, because I mean, yes, there are general rules like GDPR and others, but there are some maybe which are specific depending on your activity. Like, I don't know, not all activities are licensed, but if those are licensed, then it means that you will need to get a license. You will need to be compliant with this, and and you don't want to lose the license because you will also spend time and effort and financials to acquire it.
Continuing on Miroslav's point, definitely the starting point from privacy perspective is GDPR. It's pretty tough. It's 100 pages of European legal text, which is definitely not so easy to read, and in some cases not so easy to understand what should be implemented. But again, let's say, looking deeper into the GDPR, it sets down very clear-cut requirements, what should be done, and in some cases it's pretty simple. Other thing which is pretty important, and again, I definitely do suggest to go for the specialists here. If you're working with any kind of sensitive data, for example, if you talk about medical data or, for example, identification data, I think Liudas can elaborate much broader on that. Identification data is really sensitive, and here there are some really specific requirements which you need to take care. So again, looking into the specific field of your application, your service, or your fintech orientation, you do have a set of clear requirements. In some cases, it can be requirements of European Central Bank and Bank of Lithuania. In some cases, there are some labor laws which do set some additional requirements to GDPR. But again, first things first, you should talk with Lithuanian investment agencies, which really do create some special programs, special even bounties and motivations to come to Lithuania. Looking from a fintech perspective, I do think that Lithuanian Bank of Lithuania is really one of the leading central banking authorities, which do really create very favorable conditions to enter European markets. And the great thing is that as soon as you get license in Lithuania for fintech services, you can work across the European Union. And that is already serious, huge market. And other good thing is that most of banking laws, most of data protection laws, they are very similar across the Europe. There are, of course, some differences, and of course, always the devil is in details. So you need to look a little bit deeper. But in general, the approach is more or less similar for whole Europe, and we definitely can work as a starting point. Both BCCS cluster and Lithuanian investment authorities, Lithuanian Central Bank, and other needed connections here. So, Andrius, back to you.
Thank you, Martynas. Liudas, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so like adding to what was said, that was a really good advice from Miroslav and followed with Martynas, that like suggestion to find the regulations and committees that the road is really simple, just to approach. And it's actually, we are promoting like a bit of Lithuania, and we have this Invest Lithuania, but in all the European countries is the same. So there are agencies supporting all the foreign investments, and like frankly speaking, all the communities in European Union are really friendly, So to approach some kind of agency, let's say, to guide through the process, then to meet any of the associations or clusters, we can talk, on our cluster that we know that we are really friendly, and advising lots of the people around and basically giving the advices on how to do the things, to validate the idea itself sometimes, and then to basically really be guided, let's say, in the process on establishing. And what Martina said is, we have to understand that in all the European Union, the framework itself is the same, so of the regulation, of the understanding the things, what kind of activities are licensed or not, or special requirements are there, and all this stuff. On the other hand, what we have to also understand that the fines for not following the regulations are really huge as well. I don't know if you heard, but it's just recent that the Irish regulator put those $255 million US fine on WhatsApp. Yeah, so just to imagine, like the sizes of those fines, and that like privacy by design, and it's in all the European Union, is that it's a hygiene, like must to have things, and that's how we design things. Especially with the product that relates any kind of personal information. So that's what we have to always consider and to start with. Yeah. So these are really good advice. But following on, basically, the best entry point is actually like those local associations in whatever market. We can speak for our country, so that Invest Lithuania and BCC cluster would be a really good entry point, basically, to find out the things and to navigate through the different regulations, all this stuff, and then to go into that direction, understanding the market, how does the rules work, what is important, what is not so important at the beginning, and then just swiftly moving forward. Back to you, Andrius.
Thank you, Liudas. You originally came from a financial institution, so I'd like to touch upon the subject of what Martynas mentioned previously, that once you get a financial institution license here in Lithuania, it's actually pan-European, meaning that you can passport this license to the whole EU. So aside from the GDPR privacy laws, can you mention some of the other regulations to keep in mind, such as KYC, AML, and similar things?
So running a financial institution, basically, besides of all those like basic things, so there are some additional regulations. Yeah. So one of the, let's say, most important in running any financial institution, doesn't matter if it's like lending and or insurance or whatever type of institution, or just the payments transactional business, is the anti-money laundering and the directives behind that. Yeah. So, and that involvement of the directives, like of the rule set of how to protect the society from the money laundering, basically is involving really quick. So when we were introduced by, just to give an example, when we were introduced by Anti-Money Laundering Directive 5, we already knew that the Anti-Money Laundering Directive 6 is coming. So even though the implementation time, there is some period of when it has to be implemented within the financial institutions, everybody already knew that the new is coming. So, and that's the speed of the involvement. And then, depending on the activity, on the products that you want to introduce to the market, it means to the consumers, there are also some different regulations. So on the lending, there are some specific requirements on the lending, and especially for the lending industry, and what has to be met, what has to be evaluated, and all this stuff. Because we all have to understand that in European Union, the consumer is always, has the first priority on the protection at all the time. It is the same with the employees. It is the same with the consumers. It is always about that, So all the privacy requirements, all the some kind of financial activity licensing and requirements are always related to that, to protect the end consumer, and that's how all the laws and everything are kind of made. So it means that financial activity is kind of sensitive thing from all the perspectives, So not to have some kind of misunderstandings or situations that some kind of company, I don't know, so like lends too much money or something like that to the end consumer, or just doesn't give the money back, let's say in the just simple transactional business. So that's why this is like literally highly regulated, and that regulation, even though we have like some common rules on that and how the laws are applied, but these are a bit different in different European countries. So just again to give a bit of example, so looking from the privacy and data protection perspective, basically everyone is on the same level from that perspective, and everyone is just accepting this like the top level, let's say the requirements, and from the financial perspective, especially what touches with the anti-money laundering, and then how those laws are applied in the local countries are a bit slightly different. Of course, with the same approach, with the same targets that needs to be achieved and all this stuff, but slightly different, with the process handling, how one or other action has to be done, or what kind of things has to be or not has to be evaluated. So that's what we have to have in mind when especially focusing on the fintech. But in general, any product that a company wants to create as a financial product will be licensed anyway.
Thanks, Liudas. I see that we're nearing the end of the panel discussion today, so I'd like to close the panel discussion with a question to you all. So overall, are these regulations an enabler for business or rather a barrier for entry? Miroslav, maybe we could start off with you.
Yes, sure. In my opinion, having some experience also in other markets outside Europe, what I could maybe point to that in Europe we have quite clear and predictable regulations. So they are not going to change in a day or two, or and you are expected to comply with those regulations, but this more or less upfront. What maybe mistakes which are made is that maybe you hire a consultant and he, for example, tells you only about 70% of regulations which apply to you, and then you calculate your investment based on this incorrect understanding of the situation, and then you get the license, and then you suddenly realize that there are some costs which nobody told you about. That there are some regulations for operational risk management and so on, so which you did not calculate in your business model, and then as usually fintechs are also like the startup types of companies, they need to grow. So then you are adding more customers, and then if you do not adjust your risk profile or models you are doing, then you will potentially, regulator can become interested in whether you are really, doing everything correctly. Yeah. So I would say that because in other countries, regulator can just sometimes invent things on the fly. Yeah? So these are just to maybe so that they would get some contributions from you financially or whatever. Yeah? So in this regard, I think European overall regulations are quite clear, they're understandable, and if you are, if you do not agree with some violations, you will be able to defend yourself in court. So I mean, you can challenge basically if you feel that you are right and the regulator is not right, then you can challenge this in court. Success rate is dependent, but I mean this is basically rules are known upfront. Yeah, that this is maybe a difference from emerging markets where sometimes the government can decide for you, how you should act. Yeah?
Thanks, Miroslav. Over to you, Liudas.
So I would say that entering the market, it might be a slight barrier to do that. Just to prepare, let's say, the infrastructure and the policies and all the stuff, and basically, as Miroslav said, to calculate the business plan right. But to operate in the market, there's definitely an opportunity, just in terms of that the rules how to operate, and that's the most important, because then it's way more stable. Then you can project the things for longer time, for longer period, and to have just sustainable business model as such. Because in non-regulated environment, it's very difficult to predict what will happen. And the situation might change, the business models might change, and all the stuff, because you don't have any framework of the rules that you are operating in, and especially what touches with the financial products, with the privacy related products or data related products. That's really important to have, because we can otherwise we could go to the really wild west, and with a very like untransparent business models, where the winner could be actually just people without any kind of understanding of just simple things like just consumer protection and all this stuff. Yeah, so for sure, for me to operate for the operation is just more an opportunity than any kind of barrier.
Thanks, Liudas. Martynas, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Miroslav and Liudas?
I can only echo my colleagues' points. And let's put things straight that Europe, and not only Europe, talking about, for example, GDPR, we're also speaking about UK, we're also speaking about Swiss. GDPR is applicable in Swiss as well. So it's a most prestigious location in the world from that sense, which sets the tone, sets the rules for the whole world in the privacy protection and so on. So yes, there are requirements. They are in some cases maybe pretty tough, but the good thing is that they are super transparent. They are predictable, as my colleague said, and it's not so difficult to comply with them. And also, you need to think in the very broad terms. It's not only about fintechs. It's about insurtech. It's about regtech business. Huge opportunities here. Huge shortages of staff, of data protection officers in Europe. And here I'm not speaking only about people. There is shortage of intellect here. I mean, we are simply don't have enough resources to create applications, to create privacy programs, to create software which takes care about privacy, data protection, and things like that. So huge market opportunities here, and I definitely would encourage to come to the Europe to offer your services. But of course, coming to Europe, you need to mind privacy, you need to mind security, you need to mind regulations, because it's a non-negotiable. Europe takes care about consumer protection and obeying to the laws, which are pretty transparent. So full encouragement, come to our markets from BCCS side. I'm sure that we can support your journey into the European space for fintechs, regtechs, insurtechs, and such kind of businesses. And it's not that complicated as it may seem from a first look. Thanks, Andrius, back to you.
Thank you, everyone. So a big thanks to our panelists and our viewers for joining today's discussion. As my colleague said, we're always happy to help, so feel free to reach out and connect with us at BCCS Cluster or directly with Martynas, Miroslav, or Liudas. We're more than happy to help. And last but not least, I would like to thank the Fintech Convergence Council, Internet and Mobile Association of India, for hosting this conference and for the opportunity to have us here. So I wish everyone a great day ahead. It's been a pleasure, and see you guys soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.